When I was in the Vicary ward of St. Bart's Hospital in the City of London, which is a cardiac ward, one of the most famous heart hospitals in the UK, I was in bed number 8, which was immediately beside the large windows to the left, overlooking the city. You could hear the traffic, people moving around, church bells of St. Bart's the Great. It literally would chime on the hour at the end of the ward. It was really rather a lovely sound. In the bed immediately to the right of me, bed number 7, was an elderly man who I befriended. Got to know him across, say, 6-7 days, him and his family and his wife. His name was Bryan Taylor. He spelt it with a Y, B-R-Y-A-N. He had been in the British Navy during the Second World War and stayed in the forces until in 1957, when the British government dropped its first nuclear device in the Pacific Ocean over Christmas Island. He was there, and he was sent in with all these other poor troops to clean up the aftermath, the mess, all these dead and contaminated animals, especially birds, wildlife. And of course he spent an entire lifetime suffering from melanomas and cancers. So when I met him, he was quite literally on a DNR, a do not resuscitate, which had been signed by his wife. I remember when the doctor came around to his bed with these 3 or 4 other interns, and he said this out loud. I was stunned to hear it. He'd actually signed a DNR. This was the real world, in the bed immediately to the right of me. So I befriended him because his legs were wizened. He was wearing these tight surgical stockings, which I've become known to because you need to wear them for circulation reasons after the operation. They take veins from both of your legs to put quite literally in your own heart. And his tiny wizened legs, his feet would stick out over the bed. Now, in hospitals in the UK, you have blankets which have little square holes in them. And this is during the winter. I'd been in hospital for 75 days, from November, December, January and February. And the snow was down, and it was incredibly icy and bleak and cold. And the point is that you could only take, even at the coldest, in a side room when I was in Whipscross Hospital in Leytonstone, the most you could stand would be, say, 3 of these blankets, which had holes in them to let the air in and through, because they would be incredibly warm and then of course become incredibly heavy down on your body. And if you're suffering from angina, as I was, you couldn't deal with that. Bryan Taylor had 4 of these things because his legs were permanently freezing. He'd have to be helped out of the bed, and he'd have to be helped to the toilet area. The curtain would be brought around. He was pretty miserable when I met him. He was old school too. He cut out coupons from detergent boxes. He gave me this. That's his signature there, and his mobile phone number, which is cut out from the back of a tissue box. I've pictured it, and it's in my book of poems, My Broken Heart, 75 Days in the NHS. He gave me his mobile phone. When I left the Vicary ward on the 10th of February, I got 2 letters written off to him. I determined to keep them upbeat and witty. I can be good at that at times. He finally passed away on the 21st, only 11 days after I left. He'd been transferred over to Walthamstow, to E17, which is E17 mentioned in the poem, to a hospice up near Whipscross Hospital. When I was in Vicary ward, I took his hand because he was breaking up and he was feeling he was a burden on his family. And I told him he absolutely wasn't, and meant it. He wasn't. He just felt miserable. He wanted to go. And of course the entire system, the entire medical profession is geared to keeping him alive. But at some point you have to turn around and ask, at what cost? How does that respect the patient? And sometimes you need reminders in this world. The universe sends you out little signals. There but for the grace of God go I. I would not want to denigrate his memory for a second. It's not meant like that. But you do face up to stuff when you're faced with the truth, with the brutal reality of what governments and politicians who shafted him for decades, and all those men, can and will do to you and your loved ones. Sometimes all the cliches are true, and sometimes even the movies have the answer, like the mighty Shawshank Redemption. You get busy living, or you get busy dying. Anyway, this poem is called Quality of Life. It's for Bryan Taylor, who passed away on the 21st of February 2013 in London, and I wanted it to be by way of some kind of memory for him. And I dedicate this to him, his wife Margaret, and his family, and I hope they find some kind of comfort in it. Over Christmas Island in the Pacific Ocean in May 1957, a UK Valiant dropped its first nuclear device. Bryan Taylor and other seamen picked up the dead birds, then paid a whole lifetime's contamination price. He cuts out money off coupons from Persil detergent boxes, while he lies riddled with melanoma and cancers. He shows me the Daily Mirror, court cases failed again, shafted by politicians with no mercy nor answers. He has 7 tablets and medical goos to take each morning, permanently bedridden with no quality of life. I'm saddened when a doctor agrees to honour his DNR, witnessed and signed by devoted Margaret, his wife. He has tight surgical stockings on his badly wizened legs, 4 blankets when most of us can only bear 1. I hold his hand as he tells me he feels like a family burden and craves peace before his last decline is begun. I make him a tea, but it's too hot for him to sip from a straw, so I get the temperature right the second time. We strike up a real friendship, and I meet his family on visits and watch over him when his pain starts to climb. I wrote him 2 letters when I got home on February 10th, but he'd been transferred to a hospice in E17. Apparently he enjoyed them, but hated the cold, lonely place and regretted his life and what it had been. His tortured body eventually succumbed on the 21st of Feb. His ashes are scattered beneath a sycamore tree. May fleets of angels welcome you into paradise, Bryan Taylor. You're home, you're whole, you're finally free.